well, I guess we have a quorum. So this is the PEG Access Advisory Committee for Thursday, November 2nd, 2023. It's being recorded. And
Just an extra.
oh, okay. Yeah, so if we can get started here, if I can get a motion to convene.
Motion to convene.
You don't need a motion
No,
to convene, you
okay.
just need a roll call vote to see who's
Okay, yeah,
present.
so we can have a roll call here of the committee members.
Megan Carroll.
Megan. Erwin,
Here.
Terry,
I'm not really a
Oh.
committee member, but I'm here.
okay, and I'm Vince Carlson. So we have a quorum. So on the minutes, there are minutes pending from June 1st and September 29th. And I'm recommending that we postpone those because what we had started to, well, we had a little issue with the ones on June 1st, but I do have hand notes that I've done to date. On the September 29th one, initially we were going to do these with the new Zoom feature that automatically summarizes the meeting. And that is still pending, and I have an exhibit there to pass on a little bit later today. But what I propose that we do is deal with both of these minutes at the next meeting, and then we'll also have an opportunity to experiment with the new Zoom feature. And we're almost behind the 8 ball on this now because Jason and I have discussed this on a number of occasions before. What Zoom has actually done since then is that they've introduced this as a feature that's available automatically built in to the Zoom Zoom contract itself. Previously, it took a separate copy of Zoom to do this, but now what happens when the meeting begins is that there's a little notice that pops up for people and tells them that Zoom is going to be able to summarize the meeting and send out summary notes at the end, or, you know, at the option of the chair can receive them and edit them. And it almost produces, from what I've seen, you know, a acceptable copy of everything that's required by the open meeting law. Actually, there are some conventions, so you'll see at the end of this meeting an item that says item 7 says recap, and if we do that correctly, it will include all of the things that are required by the open meeting law, including in particular everything that's required to vote during a meeting. And then secondly, the things that according to the, I think, exact wording or the almost exact wording of the open meeting law say that they should be understandable to, you know, anybody that is attending the meeting, you know, that the important issues will be understandable to anybody that's attending the meeting. So that would have to be verified, but in the case of doing that, there'll be very little left for the clerk to do.
Nice.
And it will be available universally. That means in every single, you know, committee, board, trust that the town has. And hopefully that means that, you know, more resource will be available, in particular to MMN, to do more significant or important programming, you know, in the education area and in the just the general public area. So with that, as item 3, I think the next item is the MMN broadband update.
Yeah. First, I want to welcome Julie. Julie Manugian is our new media manager.
Hello.
She's been here for 2.5
Yes.
weeks. So we're very lucky to have Julie. She came from Lex Media before this and has worked in PEG for about a decade and
Yeah.
then TV for much longer than that. So she has a ton of experience and she's doing a great job so far and has been having a lot of meetings, spending time with the staff, visiting the different sites and just a lot of introductions so far. But it's a great time to start with the franchise negotiations going on, a lot of upgrades happening and sort of PEG being revitalized in Concord. So I'm very excited to have you, Julie.
Thank you.
Excited
to be here.
I'm going to turn it over to Julie for a couple updates in a minute, but I'll just give you a few other updates. In addition to Julie's role, we've been transitioning Matt and Tori into slightly different roles. Tori is taking on some more education coordinator functions, and Matt is moving into the production manager role that's been slightly modified before it was approved by the personnel board. And so hopefully in the next week or two, they'll formally be in those roles and we'll make the announcement that they have different titles. So that's
Is
exciting.
production manager what
Mark Paul.
Mark was doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
At the time, the production manager had supervisory responsibilities as well. So we've removed those now that we have a media manager. So we have the 3 full-time staff. We have 4 part-time videographers, but they work erratically depending on the meeting schedule and their availability. I don't want to steal Julie's thunder, but we're advertising for another or 2 videographers. Just
Okay, so Matt is production manager, Julie is media manager, and
Tori will be the senior producer / education coordinator. She's a senior producer today. So we've that education coordinator job has been around for quite a while, but has been vacant. And it's really important role because it bridges the divide between schools and PEG and also helps train the public to use our equipment and get engaged. So Tori's been teaching and teaches at UMass Lowell now and has been a teacher for a long time and has a lot of photography and video editing experience. And so she's going to be a great asset to help the public and the students embrace the technology we have here.
great, we should advertise that.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then we have started on the Ripley camera upgrades. So at Ripley, that's where we film our school committee meetings. And after replacing a lot of equipment last year, we found that it was inadequate. So we put that in the budget this year to address the remaining equipment. We got lucky in that we got a free camera controller for that purchase, but now we're waiting for that to arrive through the rebate process from Sony. So once that arrives, they'll schedule the work. We'll coordinate with the schools to get access to the room, and then we'll test it out, make sure everybody's trained and knows how to use the new equipment, and then you should see a dramatic improvement in the quality over there. And also, not only the improvement in the quality, but also consistency among locations, because we've had this problem in the past where a videographer is trained in a particular location and there's a lot of complexity and nuance to each place. And so then the next night they can't fill in for someone else because they don't know how to use the equipment there. Or, when we do, joint meetings where we need more people, they're just not as familiar. So that as we advance the technology, we're also standardizing so that everybody's familiar with, once you learn it, you kind of know how everything works. There might be obviously minor differences, but at least the same basic technology. We had also in the budget for some upgrades to the townhouse. So Julie and I have been talking about that. I've also been talking to people in the town manager's office about that. They have some ideas about how they want to use that space for the hearing room especially, but right now we're limited as MMN to cover events in both rooms at the same time. We have to actually physically move equipment around in our production room. So when the select board has a meeting in the select board room and then they walk to the hearing room, we need like 5-10 minutes to reorient everything, and that's not ideal. It'd be nice to just flip a switch and be ready to go, or have 2 meetings simultaneously. We recently had a forum in the hearing room and a FinCom meeting, and they overlapped by a few minutes, and we had to make alternative arrangements because of that. So this will allow us to have multiple simultaneous meetings in the townhouse. And also, they might be reorienting the hearing room a little bit, I've heard, and we're trying to improve the acoustics in there, which is always a problem because it's so large and open and angular spaces, and not a lot of softening, dampening things in the room. So
So what's your time time goal for having that?
Well, I think if we can get a concrete idea this year so that we can be out, because we might be going out to bid for that. So realistically, I think it'll be done in the spring, but I think that depends on the procurement hurdles
Okay.
we have to overcome. If we can just get 3 quotes, I think then it could be in progress by the end of the year or early next year. But if it's, you know,
Yeah, it depends if it's
yeah,
10,000. Yeah.
right. And also it depends on the other stakeholders communicating their requirements. If
Okay.
they have a clear idea, this is how the room is going to be, this is where the speaker will stand, this is what we want, then that will go faster. If it's like they need time to flush that out, it might be much slower. So, but yeah, we're excited to get that done. And then we've started conversations about the fiscal 25 budget. The town has been putting together the capital requests for the town side. Enterprises have a little bit more time, but last year we were a little late on getting things together. There was some transition period there. So we're trying to be ahead of the curve this time and get everything ready. So Julie and I have had some conversations about that. She's still just learning the fundamentals of the budget, but also talking about and finding out the needs in the community and what we're trying to achieve in the next year, and update our capital budget that we had put together last year, because we made some changes last minute. If you'll remember, we moved some money from 25 into 24 because we were advised by Sue that we didn't want to see such a large fund balance as we entered negotiations. So just trying to align those changes made at the last minute with our 5-year plan and our need for maybe a space that doesn't have some of the restrictions and issues that this space has too.
So you might be looking at new space.
Right. So I
Right.
think we're open to keeping this facility and in our partnership with the school, but also having another space too that maybe people can go to during the day or at times where it's not accessible to the public, like
Yeah.
it is here. So and then we're also limited with office space. We only really have one office here. The other 2 offices one is a control room and one is in the education area. So just having a place for people, and then more multi-use rooms, like we're doing a podcast right now. And so just having the ability to do multiple things at one time, because that has limited us in the past. When we have a show, it takes up the entire production space.
So, are you hoping this will be part of our negotiation with Comcast that they can help pay for some of these things?
Yeah. Yep. We've talked to Sue about
Yeah,
that
good.
and been trying to lay the groundwork
Yep,
on
great.
understanding how that's going to look. And then also just I think, and I talked to Julie about this too, but right now this is our head end. We have one location where we can go live from, which is here in Concord. Since we're fortunate to have broadband everywhere, that's okay. So in other words, if we need to go live from the Council on Aging or from the townhouse or whatever, we have fiber to everywhere, so we can get that signal back here. But we might think about, if we do have another place where people are working, and if we have a studio space, that maybe we want that to be a second head end or a backup head end. But maybe not. We have to flush that out. So that'll be part of that conversation. I won't mention too much about the franchise negotiations since we're going to go into an executive session, but I'll say that process has been going forward, and Terry has met with us, and we have a meeting scheduled with Comcast in November. So we can talk more in depth about that, but I just from a high level, that those conversations are moving forward. And we understand that we now have an agreement from Cambridge that we can see and use. So that's exciting. Sue really liked that contract. So there's some interesting language in there that was agreed to. And then we also hear that Carlisle is moving forward. So we'll get more of an update, but they're trying to forge an agreement with Comcast as well. So Julie, why don't you take it away with a couple updates?
We have a new podcast series that's starting now. It's going to be 16 parts, and it's all about the history of Concord. And there's a student that is involved with that. So that's might be finishing up when we leave, but that's happening now. So that's exciting. Like Jason said, we're going to be hiring part-time videographers. We have 40 people who have applied.
Oh, great.
So we're going through all of those resumes right now. And then we are also working on, I've already started actually working on improving the quality of our meeting recordings with just a small little tweak on how we are shooting them and recording them. It's going to make them look even better once they're edited and then they're up on YouTube. So, yeah.
So right now, essentially, all the video ends up in Zoom for people to see. And we take those Zoom recordings and we put the Zoom recording on air. But we use HD or 4K cameras, and everything goes through Zoom's processing and compression and ends up not looking as great. So we're kind of flipping that so that we're recording locally and then using Zoom as an input when it's required. But that will result in a much higher video quality. Yeah. One of my beefs is like in large rooms, it's hard to see who's talking. You can't even see
Yeah,
people's mouths
yeah.
moving sometimes with like a wide shot. So Julie has been talking to the team and trying to work on tweaks like that, and also just how we're utilizing the equipment that we have to get tighter shots when it's appropriate and do more switching. So,
Great.
Yeah.
Even when we're live in the meeting, I can't see sometimes who, like if there's two different groups.
Right.
We had two different groups recently. Oh, I know what it was. The Nene,
oh, yes.
we had a group in Japan and we had a group here. But that's probably very unusual.
Right.
But
right.
anyway, it is really hard to see when there's a wide shot of the whole table.
Yeah.
We definitely want to make those improvements, make it clearer and better quality when you're watching it.
How widely did that Japan group get publicized? Actually, I just found out about it from the town manager's newsletter.
Yeah, we announced it a couple times at the select board meeting, but it wasn't on the calendar. It wasn't an open meeting or, yeah, I know.
By the way, I made a copy of that most recent town manager's newsletter that comes out weekly. And I think that should get mailed out somehow. You know, it's very useful. And how widely does that circulate, Jason?
I mean, it definitely gets sent to all staff and then some key board and committee members, and then it's posted on the town's website. But I don't think they use the news and notices for each of them. I think it's just kind of there for people to consume if they're interested.
Yeah, actually, I haven't seen it on the town website. I actually had to search for it.
Okay.
And then it does have all of the archives and everything like
Yeah.
that. But it's very well done.
Yeah.
It seems to be quite comprehensive, and a lot of it is news that, you know, I don't think that, you know, the general public knows about. So,
Yeah, I think at the select board meetings, Carrie kind of alludes to it and,
Mhm.
and takes highlights from it for some of her updates, and she mentions it pretty often. So
there could be some kind of maybe a, you know, an opt-in, you know, public request form to
That's a good
get
idea.
copied on that.
yeah, I know Civic Plus has the ability to subscribe to certain buckets. So if we set up a bucket for that, people could subscribe.
That's
So
a
whenever
good
there's a
idea.
new one,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll make a note of that. So I think that was my last update. I mean, I'll just mention the 250th planning is ongoing from both a media coverage and public safety and technology perspective. So, and the other hats that I wear with the GIS team, we're working closely with public safety on mapping and identifying assets and where everything goes. We're also thinking about our coverage and what we're going to how we can help both the planning and the execution and the broadcasting of the events. So it's an exciting time to be involved.
Anybody else on the committee have any questions on MMN activities this recently here? And are we completely up to date now in terms of the staffing? Aside from the videographers, which
Right, and in the videographer position, it's not that we're looking to fill, you know, more hours than we had before. These videographers work sort of as needed and also based on their schedules. So if we have some videographers work very little in a year, some work much more regularly. So it's just about having a wider pool of people to draw from. In terms of full-time staff, we're gonna see how this goes with these 3 staff, because with them moving into those roles, we are losing a senior producer essentially, but we had 2. And so we're kind of going to wait and see how things go once we get through the equipment upgrades and have Julie on board for a while, let her sort of determine the needs, but what, you know, whether and how that position is backfilled. So.
Okay, any other questions? Carl, do you have any questions?
I have a question though. So Tori is gonna, does she go to the middle schools and talk to the principals, or how does that work for her position?
I mean, typically, like right now, before she's currently a senior producer, so
Okay, got it.
she's not yet in that new role.
Okay,
So
she's
when
not
she's
there.
in that
Yeah.
new role, we'll
Yeah.
be
Okay,
working more closely with the schools.
cool. Yeah, that sounds good, because there's like an AV club at the middle school, but I don't know what
Yeah.
they do, so.
Yeah,
Because, it conflicts with, but yeah.
right. But yeah, that would be the type
Alright.
of thing that,
Jump off of that, when you said Magic Words Middle School,
Mhm.
how involved is MMN in laying the conduit or making sure that you've got the ability to broadcast? The new middle school is being involved in.
so early on, I was more involved in terms of the middle school building projects. At this point, we're in the construction phase. I think once the shell of the building is up is when they re-review the engineering drawings for electrical, telecom, data, all that stuff. So usually in municipal building, that's when the teams go back in and they say, okay, now that we can walk around in the space, like, is this going to work for a meeting space, or is the public really going to meet here? Is this where, and so when that comes up, we'll be very involved. But at this point, it's kind of review the plans, know what was planned originally, and then when they're ready to execute, just make sure we have input into but in terms of being able to broadcast from the building itself, we'll be fine. I mean, they're going to be wired and have high-speed connectivity back here. So, but depending on what rooms they want that technology in, I mean, it was pretty heavily designed in terms of technology. So I remember some of those meetings, saying, well, what if we use it for a meeting space? We should add the drops, because it's so cheap when they're building it versus down the road. So.
Okay, well, let's see, the next item actually I had put on there, and it's actually some supplemental stuff on the MMN programming based on things that have gotten started, and it's as much, I guess, a question as a statement about anything. But what I just passed out was something that actually we passed a milestone about 6 months ago, I think it is now, when we now have more than 1,000 subscribers.
Congratulations.
And that's kind of a magic number, because it means that you can start, in kind of the terminology of YouTube and others, you can start monetizing your activity. I don't know how much Lexington got involved with this, but this little sheet kind of summarizes the main aspects of what happens on that. And Rowan, I don't think this is on the
Yeah, I was just going to look for it.
on the town website, but I will circulate PDFs of this document, as soon as we finish and we describe it. So basically what it was, and the milestone that we hit, is the 1,000 subscriber number. There's a second item on there that requires 4,000 hours of public viewing per year. And this is something new on the part of YouTube, it's something called short views. And actually you need to have 10 million of those. But what they've encountered is they're having a lot of competition with TikTok. And TikTok is actually drawing viewers away from YouTube. So YouTube is kind of trying to strike back. And I understand it's been quite successful so far, actually. That YouTube has picked up a lot of viewers, and I know a couple of people that actually are somewhat serious about what they view on YouTube, but it is more than cat videos. And even though I guess cat videos are one of the more popular categories, but anyway, they are trying to pick up viewers, and they are urging creators very heavily to produce these little these very, short videos, and most of them are 30 seconds long, or a minute or a minute and a half long. But in any case, it's one or both or the other. In other words, the most important one for at least maybe the Concord YouTube demographic is the 4,000 hours of public viewing. And I don't know, that's one of the metrics, I think, Jason, that it's going to be interesting to see, how we're doing on that now and how we might improve it.
Yeah, yeah, we are eligible for that. We meet the criteria for that. So, and I remember this conversation has come up before, and sometimes people come at it from different angles. So right now, there are sometimes ads shown on Minuteman Media content, but YouTube places those ads and YouTube receives the full revenue from those ads. So we're not electing to add ads into our programming, but YouTube as a platform sometimes displays them.
Right.
The monetizing, so right now, as you mentioned, it's about $18 per 1,000 views. We had about 4,000 views. I just looked it up last month, which is about $72 or $864 a year, which, grows modestly. But, the other thing we can do if we monetize is choose to prevent ads from appearing on certain content or all of our content. And I've had some people like Matt Johnson on the select board said you should elect to monetize and then make every video ad free because it's not worth the money and it's annoying. And this is the goal is public outreach and education and government access. And so you don't want to create barriers to that. You should get rid of the ads. And then other people say, well, it's a revenue stream. You should, add more ads and then maybe you get more revenue. At this point, it's a small amount of money to walk away from, and it seems to provide a slight public service, but it definitely is a conversation I think the town should have about the direction they want to see. I don't think that Julie and I should make this decision because while we watch a lot of content, we don't watch as much as the town does, and it's going to affect everybody here. So
how would you like to see that conversation? Who do you think should discuss it?
Well, I mean, I think it would have been nice to talk about at the Comcast listening sessions when we had all those people in that survey out there. But something like that, the next opportunity we have for a survey would be useful. We can put something on our website or even on our channel, a link to, let us know. Would you prefer to see more revenue for cable access, or would you rather have fewer ads? So I'm open to feedback. I mean, does anybody in the committee have
Yeah,
suggestions?
I hate ads. I think that's exactly right. I don't think that there's a barrier to having people watch what we're trying to provide. So yeah, I suggest just paying to make it ad free. That's my 2 cents.
Is there I don't know how the YouTube works, but is there a middle ground where you could do something like a public service announcement that is created by a local agency or whatever? We say these ads we want, but we don't want these other ads.
Well, so like as Vince has on here on this piece of paper, which I know, Erwin, you can't see, but it says types of monetization, views, subscriber donations, affiliate links, photo video services, partner merchandise. So the average creator on YouTube makes money in a lot of different ways. And some of them are, mixing into their content advertisement, which is the most effective means of advertising because the people watching don't know it's an ad and they don't skip it. But using products or talking about things. And so in one way, we could tag at the end of every meeting a 10-second promo for some other thing that's happening in town. And in a way that's advertising, but it's a good form of advertising. And it could be public service announcements. It could be, Halloween's coming up, make sure you're safe driving that night or something. So we certainly could do that with video. I don't know if we can elect in YouTube to actually air like public service announcements. I'm not sure.
Well, I really like this idea. For example, we could advertise the town manager's report that it's available on the website. We could advertise events at the 250th coming up. We could advertise the podcasts of the history that you're doing. We could have a calendar of committee meetings. There's a lot of really good things. Just this month, we could advertise for surveys that we want people to do. We've had a lot of meetings this month on transportation and 2229 Main Street and all these things where we want to get people to come out. That Nana thing didn't have enough advertising. So I really like this idea. I think we should. But Megan, I don't know if you feel like that's too much of an ad.
I mean, like, when you're watching a video and it gets in, like my kids will get asked to watch something on YouTube, but then in the middle of it, there's an ad, and it just makes
Right.
me furious because it's like,
Right.
this is their education. It shouldn't be interrupted by a corporation trying to sell them something.
But how do you feel if the town was advertising?
It's,
for it?
I think that's different, don't you?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
I think it's a different than like, you know, like Coca-Cola.
right,
So, yeah.
right.
Well, some of the more heavily viewed things actually are also things that are viewed outside of the town by other people. For instance, you know, Concord is a tourist destination.
Right.
And it's a worldwide tourist destination. And when people do a search, for instance, if they're planning to go to Concord, or when they're doing a search for where to go for a vacation, you know, many of the things, particularly if they're related to, you know, US history and things of that nature, very much are things that are potentially things that get views and actually will increase that count of the viewership. The most heavily viewed things in the history of MMN that I know about, one of the most heavily viewed ones was a program on Orchard House, you know, which is
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Alcott House.
Right.
And it was called The Women of Orchard House. And this was not the movie Little Women. This was actually a documentary that had been done, I think, less than 10 years ago, but probably.
Oh, very
8 or
recent. It was really recent.
Yeah, well, yes, there was, the Little Women feature was very recent. The Women of Orchard House was actually a documentary, and originally it was started by an outside group. But it was by a group that either there were some management changes or production changes or something like that, and it basically lapsed. It got revived, and it was basically, I think it was Sam Kruger from the staff at MMN at the time. And there was somebody else on the staff that was fairly heavily involved with that. So that actually ended up winning a local Emmy for that. And so that type of programming is something that, you know, I think particularly in the light of the 250th,
Right, right.
we can plan for.
And there's a subcommittee on the 250th that you folks should coordinate with them. Because I can't remember who's in charge of that subcommittee, but I'm sure you know. And, you know, let them do some of the work for it because they're looking at some of these options.
Now, another one of the very heavily viewed ones actually historically was a little documentary that was done for the COA, as a matter of fact, at the COA by the town health officer on Lyme disease. And that got very heavily viewed, mainly by viewers, I think, although this is where, you know, the demographics comes in and the audience, by people outside of the Concord. I think it was by some, in particular, maybe some groups that just said, well, here's a very good summary of Lyme disease and how you should be aware of it and what you should do if you think you know, you caught it. And there's certainly a number of other subjects of that type that, you know, really are good public service types of things to do. And there's another one that I don't know if anybody's ever been able to figure it out, but there was a gentleman at COA that discusses various historical topics. And apparently he did one on Genghis Khan, or, you know, post Roman, you know, the fall of Rome, what happened when Rome declined. So there was something on Genghis Khan, which I assume got picked up in some kind of a school curriculum.
Oh.
Probably. But even finding out where that actually got viewed would be interesting.
Hmm.
But again, it was something, you know, that brought viewers and indirectly advertising dollars, because as you say, they do interrupt unless you pay for it.
So I pay for YouTube because I hate ads so much. Yeah, I hate them. But yeah, but there is actually like a subgenre of people behaving badly at town meetings. That's like a really popular short. So we can maybe just, yeah. So they're really funny though. Sometimes I watch them and they're actually pretty funny. Not this town, just others. Yeah.
But I think that, you know, the tourist thing is an ongoing thing, you know, and even in terms of, hey, you know, where should we go to eat?
Right.
Right.
You know, so in terms of local businesses,
Mhm.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I would like to have a conversation about the partner program and monetizing the channel and ads, because I think that I don't think many people would object to us advertising town events and things. I think that that would probably be almost universally supported, but choosing to elect to put ads in the middle of content. And I think the risk is your brand, if the ad doesn't go well with your brand, you know,
Mhm.
if it's a sensitive discussion in the meeting, it doesn't know what's happening, and then
Right.
suddenly the ad is for something
Ugh.
that changes the tone. So
Yeah.
that's a risk. And then also just annoying people so they don't end up watching
Right.
the meeting, or people who are the clerk and who have to watch to review it, and then they have to sit through ads, and you're wasting staff
And you
time
said it's only gonna be worth $800 a year?
at this point.
Yeah, I mean, if it was worth, you know,
Tens of thousands.
100,000 a year, then now we're gonna start looking at it, yeah.
it's fortunate that, you know, we're not dependent on ads.
No, right.
There's some other towns, actually. I think it's Wayland that has even started to charge an annual subscription to look at some of their programming, you know, just because they're not getting a lot from their ISPs in Wayland.
Hey
Unfortunately, we're
guys, I
not.
just wanted to let you know I jumped in.
Why?
Hi.
Hey, Sue, have you heard of any access stations generating any significant dollars through ads on YouTube?
No, not really. There have been places that started to do it. I mean, the ads on YouTube kind of fall in two categories. So one category is the kind of things you're talking about. Another category is basically teeing yourself up so that you get into a category where people are paying to view. And there's only a couple places. For instance, in Minnesota, there's an access operation that has about 45 employees. And they have significant news and sports coverage. And some of their sports coverage is unique things like women's lacrosse. And they've actually started to put their stuff up, but they're in part of a program that I think YouTube has, where they get so much per eyeball, but you have to have so many eyeballs even to qualify for it. So, but as far as YouTube, not really. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
so.
kind of a long way off for most folks,
Yeah.
and probably not really realistic as far as a way to generate money. There's other ways you can probably generate money that are more productive is the best word.
I think I've seen the Falmouth, I think you look at Falmouth, they seem to, it's not necessarily advertising, but they've used some other means to do fundraising. I know that they have some kind of an annual subscription, sign up, particularly for businesses. You know, they're not necessarily a residential kind of a thing, but where they're trying to get subscription revenue basically from, local businesses. And they do some sponsorship, I think, of the Falmouth Road Race.
Yeah,
And
they actually, Falmouth does, there's a number of places, but it's not like advertising, it's sort of a PBS style thing, particularly for special events, but it's really not a big generator of a lot of money for most places. It's actually really, in many cases, a great way to raise awareness of what you're doing by partnering with, like, having a local, particularly for big events or frankly sports. Okay. But as far as the way that most folks are generating money that's over and above the cable money, it tends to be more in the area of production services. And that's really the main one right now. It's been the main one for a long time, is production services. There are other, it's really a combination of grants. We're seeing a lot more grants come in now for places, particularly as they branch off into doing things that aren't just your typical access TV, but more community media and technology center approach to stuff. That's training on, digital inclusion and equity and digital inclusion kind of things and so forth. That's where we see it's that combination of production services and some of the other things that aren't traditional TV things that are more media and technology things that are generating a lot of income.
So would it be possible then, for example, to get a grant for the 250th for when events are happening live all over town and you need to have the videographers go all over the place and you need special equipment and special training. Is this something that maybe we can, is there some a grant type thing for that?
It would really not, it would be more through some kind of organization that really is more into heritage and documentation of historical things. So it's not, wouldn't
Right.
be a TV kind of grant, more like, I know, I remember last time there was a committee that's in charge of the coordinating all the events. That committee might apply for through the town. The town could apply for a grant for maybe a state humanities commission, or right, or something like that for funding to document. But that would be a thought for sure.
Yeah, like Mass Historical or something
Right,
like that.
exactly.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of grants, that reminds me that Concord probably is almost kind of in one of the lead position on the assisted listening devices and the stuff that Ray Andrews has been advocating for. And I believe actually it was the acting executive director over at COA that thought she might be able to get a grant for that. But I guess in looking into it, she got the impression that the grantees, the grantors who were, it was a state program on these grants, thought that, well, Concord doesn't need it. They've got a lot of money anyway. So I'm not sure she thinks that the opportunity is too good for that. But, if there are grants available for that, but that also raises the issue of venues, because, when you think about the equipment that the various meeting venues are going to require that assistive listening, and also over in the townhouse in particular, is, going to be useful to maybe take a very lead position on that in terms of what's being done elsewhere, because, I think there was certainly, a lot of cooperation from the previous assistant town manager. And there was the Williams Sounds equipment that I think it's only deployed in the townhouse right now. That seems to be working well.
Yeah, it's there. Harvey Wheeler does have some.
That's right. Harvey Wheeler has it too. But probably in terms of making that available in the other meeting venues, right, for committees. And it would be nice to get grants for that, unless, because I believe that Williams sound equipment was relatively expensive.
Yeah, the assisted listening does get expensive.
Okay, anything else on item 5? On the mission statement, that potentially, and we are running pretty much about 10 minutes here. I had one handout, which actually is something that is a carryover from what Carlin did last year.
Now what's coming back to haunt me?
But the proposal at this point is to look at updating that.
The annual report?
No, well, I should mention that because we'll have to deal with that in December. We do have the annual report coming up. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so this is the goals for 2021 and 22 for the PEG Access Advisory Committee.
You mean 22,
I
23?
mean, 22 and 22, yeah.
Whatever. Right.
She's seen that before. And Erwin, this is on the PEG Access website
Okay,
in town, and I'll also
Yep.
copy this out after the meeting. So this is a rather complicated matrix, but you know, rather than try to cover this in any detail, there's some highlighted elements, and I don't know, maybe Carla, you can comment on this, but the ones that strike me are better understand the purpose, structure, and function of the PEG access services and the PEG access update charge. And I think we would like to make a recommendation this year that's quite maybe more substantial on the charge. And in fact, you know, what the broader future of the PEG Access Advisory Committee is really, it's historically been three functions. One is obviously to oversee the Comcast contract. That only comes up once every 10 years. And so in the more distant past, say 2005, it was basically a committee that got convened once every 10 years, basically, you know, so it's like Rip Van Winkle, basically. The oversight of the MMN activities actually was something that really got increased emphasis in 2017. And that was when the previous incarnation of MMN, which was CCTV, got transformed into Minuteman Media Network. And that was really in response to, again, an initiative to cover more committee, board, and trust meetings by the previous town manager, Chris Whalen. And so that's really when the modern PEG Access Advisory Committee got established. So it's currently now a town department, but there's not any, well, it will be useful to revisit the reason why there's still a PEG Access Advisory Committee at this point. There is one item that came up during that same context, and that had to do with freedom of press and First Amendment issues. So that does need to be addressed, because one of the things that came up with not the town manager 2 times removed, but the manager 1 time removed, is issues about communications with the town generally, even with the town staff. And so, you know, it is kind of a live issue still, because really in terms of public information going out, public information withheld, you know, the Fox can't really be entrusted with the guarding of the chicken coop. So, but that's a larger subject, and you know, as we think about the topics for the rest of the year and into early next year, we'll raise it again for December. See when it comes up again.
And you said there were 3 things: the Comcast franchise agreement, overseeing MMN, and what's the third one? I think I heard you say there were 3 main functions. Maybe I heard wrong.
There isn't one that I can think of which have the same degree of priority.
Oh, okay, I heard you
There,
wrong.
there is one. Oh, well, there was another item in the charge of the PEG Access Committee, and that was to provide advice and information to the select board in particular on changes in the industry and the technology generally.
Okay.
And one of the things, for instance, that we've seen recently in that regard, and this has come up twice now, and it's, of course, the cell towers. And one version of this came up, and actually Jason did a report on this, I think about
Right.
9 months ago, on the small cell towers, not the large cell towers, but small cell towers. And of course, we had the hearing, a couple of weeks ago now on the small cell towers. I had to leave that early, so I'm not sure how that ended up. I remember that the bulk of the discussion was raised, of course, on various issues of safety. And that, I know, is something that comes up at all such meetings. And the first round or the most recent round that we had prior to this last one was the one that was held in, it's either 2017 or 2018. And at that point, the tower of the umbrella was the main area of interest, because that looked like it was well placed, particularly in regard to the townhouse and all of downtown Concord, as a matter of fact, at that point. And that basically got tabled because, again, the town managers did not really want to go forward over the objections of the residents in particular had, to placing a 5G, antenna in the umbrella. But it's come up again recently. And what happened at the end of that?
It was just more questions that were documented for answering, and more conversations that came up. I would agree that everybody either was speaking about how badly service was needed, or making sure that their concerns were noted about something too close to the school. So that was the general sense of the meeting.
Well, there is something I think that's worth visiting, and which potentially, of course, one of the issues that came up was that even with Verizon, there are two other cell providers, and they are AT&T and T-Mobile. T-Mobile has acquired Sprint, who used to be the fourth one. So there are a lot of subscribers who do not have AT&T, and that does not necessarily satisfy, the gaps in coverage in the town that they have. However, when you look at it in terms of the small cell installations, there's at least one town in Massachusetts that I think has been proactive on it, and that's Wellesley. And I don't know, Jason, if anybody here has looked at Wellesley. What Wellesley did, basically, and I think they were proactive about this, although I haven't actually talked to the manager of the light plant there. He actually invited all three of the cell phone providers, Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T, to install small cell towers in Wellesley. And as a result of that, both T-Mobile and AT&T currently have universal coverage of all of the residential areas in Wellesley. And I think it was T-Mobile that just went operational completely within the last 12 months. And so that means if you are a subscriber to either T-Mobile or AT&T, that anywhere that you go in town, or anywhere where you live in town, you can get good cell phone service. Now, in terms of responders, that also means that a first responder in Concord, for instance, if that was the preferred service, and it isn't Verizon, because Verizon does not have coverage universally in Wellesley, but the town could subscribe to either AT&T or T-Mobile and be able to have access anywhere in town. So that is something I think, that should be looked at because it actually does address those issues. The issues of safety came up. In the case of Wellesley, they had a Harvard professor, I think, as a consultant. He wasn't actually very good in delivering, the information, but, basically they decided, as, Jason mentioned at the current cell phone meeting, that basically you can't prevent the utilization of the cell phone towers. So really, I don't know if the town would have had options, even if it was more concerned.
We've had conversations with carriers about small cell in Concord. We've talked to Wellesley and are familiar with their model, and we've talked to carriers about it. So there are unique challenges in Concord with lack of leasable backbone fiber. Like normally, a lot of different agencies, Crown Castle, Verizon, others have fiber going throughout towns that allow them to connect all those access points. In Concord, because of the undergrounding that was done and because of the Concord broadband that was put in, we don't have a lot of third-party access. And so that has kind of prevented some carriers from wanting to pursue it. And then also Concord is a very wooded and spread apart community. So the downtown is definitely high density, but other areas are not so dense. So then where do you draw the line of the coverage? Because they wouldn't realistically want to put it everywhere if there's a few $1,000 investment of capital for each, for one home or something. So they like the higher density. So
did the Wellesley model look then possible or not?
As I mentioned at the forum, the challenges we have in our downtown area are that the conduit and the facilities we have need to be replaced, and that's scheduled for a few years down the road. So once it does and we have that capacity, then the carriers will certainly have a conversation with us. But until we have the capability, it's not possible right now.
Didn't Wellesley actually do backhaul actually with a third set of a pole-mounted devices?
So I want to be careful not to get too far off topic.
Yeah, I think we're way off the agenda here, and we're gonna.
Yeah, I have to
gonna-
go pretty soon.
Yeah, I have to go at
I think
5:30.
I didn't want to hold up Sue either.
Thank you.
Now let's talk about that offline, Jason. Okay, so what is remaining on the agenda here? Well, I don't know if is there any liaison, any public comment? I don't think we have anybody in the audience.
One public comment, and Nancy Pierce from Carlisle may have something.
Yeah,
Carlin Reed 83. Oh, Nancy, let me go first and you can follow after me, okay?
Of course,
Okay.
yes.
Carlin Reed 83 would send, I'm a member of the finance committee, but speaking on my own behalf. I just want to let you know that we're having 3 programs for the league. I'm also a league member. This weekend. And they're all at the Goodwin Forum at the Concord Public Library. And I'm discovering that it is more difficult from the MMN's technical standpoint, to have a program there than it is to have it at the townhouse. And it's because of the way that the library has configured its wiring system, the audio and the visual are not just a basic plug and play, they're engineered as I understand. This is something that I don't know if you folks can help with that, but it is a motivation for an organization not to have a program at the library, which is a wonderful facility, but instead to have it at a place that's easier for MN to video program, like at the townhouse or in the select board room or in the Harvey Wheeler Center. I just want to give you that highlight.
That's really interesting because I think they have more capacity at the Goodwin Forum and better acoustics.
It's a prettier place, frankly, but
Well, that too. But there's this one event that I'm working on that they're trying to figure out, townhouse or Goodwin Forum. And so it sounds like if you're on Zoom, it's better if it's at the townhouse, but if you're live, it's better at the forum. So I think I'm glad you brought this up.
Can I say something about the Goodwin Forum? So the equipment for the Goodwin Forum has literally just arrived now that was ordered 2+ plus 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So the acoustics and the ability to film are changing. So there is a camera mounted there that we could not previously use because it didn't have the right mast and it didn't have the right hookups and equipment. And there's some other technology in the room that I think I heard half of it's been replaced so far, and they're in the next couple of weeks, ad tech will be out replacing the rest of it. So that
Wonderful.
might change some of the dynamics that you're speaking about for our ability, but we don't have permanently installed equipment there. But that is something down the road that we could certainly think about mounting some cameras there. You know, our goal would be to have cameras such that you could be here controlling the meetings in 3 different places, and you don't have to send people there because the acoustics and the cameras are all set up and ready to go. So that would be a great model to have there.
So is that in the capital plan to put in these?
Well, because we didn't know what the room had until all that equipment arrived, we were waiting to see what
Right.
gaps there are. So we'll know soon, and it will be in the capital.
Wonderful.
Okay, Nancy, I'm done.
That's,
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I just wanted to add a little historical perspective to the talk about goals. This is not necessarily a value statement, but it happens that I started reporting about Minuteman Media when it was CCTV during the period when I forget his name, the former town manager made what looked to be a kind of unilateral decision to take over because CCTV had been operated by a nonprofit that had board members from Carlisle as well as Concord. And without going into all of that history, there was an enormous amount of questioning about a government taking over a public media station. And it was my impression, Carlin can correct me if I'm wrong, because I wasn't in on all the discussions, just the public discussions of how they were going to deal with this, that the main impetus for creating your committee was that there should be some relatively independent group that could serve as a watchdog or an avenue for citizen complaints about the overbearing use or whatever, about things that appeared on the TV channel. That's really all I think that was really a main goal. It doesn't appear to me that there's been any, but you guys know better than I do. Anyway, I think that was really the main reason that it was created. That doesn't mean it has to be the main reason it exists now. I just wanted to, because I think I was the only person present for all those meetings. That's it.
thank you, Nancy. Okay, so I had put a recap on here, and this is in terms looking forward possibly to, you know, automated meeting monitoring here. So we didn't have any topics during the meeting that required voting here. The other one is, I guess, maybe make a poll of the members and the other participants about the important topics during the meeting that we might want to convey outside of the meeting, or for instance, to alert the Concord Bridge about things that, you know, they might be interested in. So is there anything that came up that, you know, people hadn't heard about before? Any new plans? I think it would be nice maybe to make some announcement on the new management here at
That's a
MMN,
good idea.
certainly.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good idea.
Actually, Megan, I don't know, the Bridge did a nice article on your
Yeah,
activity
they're
here,
great.
so,
Yeah, wonderful.
and actually, I'm curious about, you know, how things are going with the Screen
Yeah.
Actors Guild.
It's pretty depressing, but other than that, it's okay. It's you know, touch and go. We just are waiting every day. They finally came back to the table just a couple weeks ago. So they had left the table months prior, and we're just stonewalling. until October, and we just had a convention last week. So it's just interesting. We'll see. I think the big issue is AI that the studios don't want to concede anything on, which is a little bit insane to me because we should be able to own our images and our likeness. I know usually we sign it away per project, but not in perpetuity. So that's a real big issue for us. And then just plain old fashioned money, you know, they're just not willing to increase anything as far as, you know, just hourly pay. So it's a mess, but we'll see. And I trust our leadership. So, and they do own a lot of the trades that we get our information from. So we're just advised to be careful about what we read in the trades, which is always good advice. So yeah, and my daughter's plays gonna start in 20 minutes, so I should probably head out. It's over at Alcott. Is it okay if I leave now, or is that against the rules?
Oh, no, by
Okay,
all
good.
means.
But no, I'm excited, and I'm excited for the education, the new position, and welcome, and this is
Thank
very
you.
good stuff. I'm
Be careful about quorum.
quorum,
Now,
yes.
Megan,
Yeah, do we need to vote on anything?
Well, you have to vote to go into the executive.
Oh,
session,
boy,
so
all right.
you should Do that.
Yeah, so,
Well, thank you, by the way. for asking.
you see, guys.
having, concluded all the agenda business, in the meeting, we are going to adjourn and reconvene in executive session, and I want to be sure I go through the checklist here, because this is one of the things that came out of the training session at the last meeting. So, one of the things that was mentioned, which we did say to begin with, is to give as much public information as would be useful and possible about the reason for the executive session, and that is to discuss the upcoming negotiations with Comcast contract. So the purpose of that, and the reason why we're going into executive session to do that, is to deal with the requirement to have a discussion that would have a detrimental effect on the public body's negotiating position if it was held during the open session.
Correct.
And for that reason, we are going to close the public session and enter into executive sessions, and we will not reconvene in a public session afterwards. So that will be the conclusion of the meetings for today. And we'll have a roll call vote to enter into the executive session.
You'll need a motion, Vince.
And yes, and so if I can have a motion.
Sure, I'll make a motion to enter into an executive session.
And second.
Second?
And so if we can have a vote. Megan?
Aye.
Evelyn?
Yes.
Aye.
And Vince Carlson, aye. So we are convened in executive session.